What up, Random Rockers? Malina, not sure how they pronounce it, but I'm guessing Malina. LEPROUS, I'm gonna say 5th studio album by this band, well, this was the other album I had mentioned in Queen Stone Age that was kind of, In fact, this album isn't really, the band is considered a prog metal band. However, this album doesn't really come off as prog metal. I will give credit where credit is due, though. I do like this album. This album cover's sweet. I'll give him props for that. But other than that, it's, yeah. My first exposure to LEPROUS was, of course, The Congregation. Literally about last year. Not more so before the end of the year when I was doing my list for that year. So when I started listening to them and started getting to them, and then all of a sudden, a few months later, new albums coming out. It's like, okay, I like what I got out of this one, and I'm right here to tell you, this leaves off from that, but it's kind of the weaker brother album to Congregation Malina is. It definitely feels more like a prog rock album as opposed to a prog metal record, though I don't have problems with prog rock, as you've probably seen with my Steven Wilson album review, as well as past Steven Wilson albums I've talked about, and, well, you know, I love Tool, so yeah, well, that's, they kind of here nor there in terms of prog rock or prog metal and whatnot with Tool, but with this band, they started off, I guess, sort of Tool-ish in terms of its old metal style, but they kind of took a lot more from being more of a black metal approach, similar to what Isan was doing with his stuff. Ironically, given the fact that this band got its start kind of opening, I wouldn't say opening for them, as they were kind of the backup band for Isan for a while, before they became kind of in a similar way to how Beck had the Flaming Lips. That's just kind of a nice example, even though I'm not a huge fan of either of those two acts, but I do have respect for them. So don't hate me in the comments for that. But regardless, back to the album itself, Bonneville's definitely, from the moment I first listened to this, I had immediately listened to it after I just listened to this again, for like the probably 5th time that I've had it. I mean, a lot of albums, you know, but Bonneville, I knew something was off. And they did eventually get into the heavier, nicer stuff, the somewhat punchier stuff, but for the most part, this album has far more keyboard and drums, and of course the vocals are definitely a big part of it, but it seems the guitars and bass, which I'm more familiar with in terms of instruments, it's playing them, that is, they took a back seat, and certain times it pays off, like the track I had decided to choose to play to open this out, to cold open this review with, which was From the Flame, the first single. But Bonneville, which is definitely a highlight, but it's stuck. Some people say that the drums aren't all that clear. It's here nor there with me. I find the drums okay. But From the Flame is definitely, I understand why that was a good choice single. And I didn't like some of the stuff they followed that up with. Stuck, I think, was one of the ones they tried to do. And it was alright. But Illuminate was one I was kind of like, I didn't know here nor there with that one, but I liked Illuminate. Special guests going through. Anyway. But I definitely liked Illuminate. I feel like a little bit after the supposed title track, things start to pick up a little more, but it's kind of late in the album already. I mean, with Coma, the Weight of Disaster definitely is a big highlight as well. The last Milestone is definitely a little different, and it is definitely the most operatic song they've ever done. Definitely focuses far more on the synthesizers and his vocals, like nothing else. And I'm trying to remember the dude's name. If I could, Voicing. I'm not sure if I can pronounce your name, dude. I believe that's who it is. Anyway, but of course, for Norwegian prog metal, it's hard to sometimes pronounce some people's names, especially here in the States. We always get flanked for that. Regardless, and of course, tracks. Illuminate was good. Mirage definitely had some good heavy hits, hitting moments. There's some moments where you do hear them still kind of bring out that proggy, avant-garde type metal style to them. And they definitely no growls in this one, or at least brief moments of growls or screams, which we did get off Congregation, which they had to do. Or I mean, when you have an album like cover like this, I mean, come on, that's pretty metal. You gotta at least show you have some metal to you, even if your sound is a little. Definitely, I've never completely judged the book that you read, the album in this case, by its cover. And you definitely don't with this one, because it is a sweet cover, but, you know, if anything, it does definitely tell you that it's not a typical metal album, for sure, but, yeah, this album, it'll still take a couple percent, but to me, if you want to know what their best works are, I've had to do research myself, so I understood a little more about it before going into this record, and, I would have to say, Tall Poppy Syndrome. You know, a lot of people say the demo album's better. I'm like, no, it's not. Only a couple tracks really stood out to me in a good way. I couldn't really name them off the top of the head, and that should say enough to say that Tall Poppy Syndrome is a much better album. The polish was needed when it came to that, and then they moved on from there. Bilateral was definitely far more involved with jazz, the more avant-garde metal and jazz fusion-y side of things, as opposed to being a prog album, you know, especially in the metal sense. But the follow-up album, and if it was their follow-up with, I believe it, which was Cole. Yes. That's when they finally were starting to form their own sound a little bit and build off from there. And a lot of what would become of that, I feel like to a degree they may have perfected, and by focusing more on the clean and actually, you know, on a, if I'm saying his name right, or the frontman of Leprous, whose name I can I'll just say frontman of Leprous, because I'm not going to say his name right. But yeah, when it came to this album, the cleans were the biggest highlights, and the more operatic stuff, like with Rewind and stuff like that. But you don't have a whole lot to really go off of with this one. It's not a bad first pickup if you want to get into Leprous and have a slight idea of what they're about without having to deal with your screams at all, and especially if death growls aren't your thing, and you want an idea for what they are to try to get into them. I guess you could pick up this album, but in all honesty, if you really want to know what they're about in terms of their sound, I would rather Foley, like all of the entire band itself. I would definitely say either Congregation, Cole, and if you want to go a little more extreme, you have Tall Poppy Syndrome or their demo Aeola, but that's here nor there with me when it comes to that demo. I mean, it's a demo. Whatever. Also, another thing, the bonus track Root is alright. I actually prefer Pixel, the bonus track from Congregation Pixel. So, yeah. Overall, guys, I'm gonna say thumbs up. I guess the thumbs up, it's good. I'm not gonna say it's bad or anything. It's solid for what it is, but it's just, it can come off to some people as kind of, especially certain fans, even more diehard ones, as a little bit boring to them, but not enough but not in the sense that it's bad. It just doesn't have enough punch to it, like, you know, Leprous really has been known for their path throughout their discography. Whether or not they're, you know, belching out and screaming black metal, doing black metal screeches or anything like that. Which they do go from that to clean, so here and there. So their style was more progressive black, and I usually don't care for that unless you're talking about like Opeth's earlier stuff. But And this is like one of those few exceptions, I guess, in my case. Because I usually hate black metal or grindcore, so... And usually there's nothing you can do to fix that. Not even the black and shoegaze stuff could fix that for me. But so far, prog black has been the go-to. And LEPROUS, and of course Opeth's earlier stuff are good cases of that. But once again, overall, as far as the album itself, Malina, I mean, you could go ahead, pick it up, check it out, but as far as I'm concerned, just... If you have to skip it. If you have to skip it, that's fine. I'm not gonna flank against this album. I mean, there's not anything I really feel like I can talk about. I mean, the vocal, clearly the From the Flame has the better vocals. I don't remember if there do have screams on this one, which is kind of part of the reason why I don't think it's not even that. It's just there's nothing instrumentally that really helps. And it's clearly the vocals that are clearly making this album worth listening to. And The Last Milestone is definitely one of those things where it is, but it isn't that kind of a leprous kind of track. It definitely feels more operatic than anything, and especially in terms of how they want to tell whatever story they're trying to come up with. Even though I don't really know if you could say they have much of a massive concept to this, but yes, overall, I'd rather just say Congregation or Cole or any of their past records. Hell, Bilateral, if you're into even more weirder, more experimental, or even more jazz fusion-y kind of stuff as well. But Malina is just, I guess, is not a bad for a beginner. But in fact, it'd be more interesting if you start with this. Go backwards. Go to Congregation, then go backwards to the rest of their discography, then go back forwards and see how it... That's what I would find LEPROUS is interesting enough to where... Yeah, in that regard, check them out that way. I would say that. But what did you guys think of Malina? Leave a comment below, let me know. As always, guys, keep it random, keep it real, keep it rocking. I hope to see you in the next video, and hopefully you all have a happy Labor Day. Hopefully I will. I mean, I'll be playing with the band, which, by the way, small little announcement of the band. We are no longer going to call ourselves Metal Nowhere because there's already enough people that are calling us that. We're still working on a new band name, and we're finally starting up original material because we got a new guitar player. So, that's what's going on with that. Another rhythm guy, and he actually mostly does acoustic stuff, songwriter and stuff, so a lot of our stuff is going to come off more closer to an alternative kind of thing, but hopefully in a way that sounds better than most of what's out there today. My God. Sometimes it gets to the point where you can't tell between the difference of alternative and indie in a bad way, and that's what's been happening with radio lately, so... It just disappoints me, man. But regardless, this album is somewhat disappointing, I guess, too, but, you know, it's fun. It can be fun to a degree if you prepare yourself for it. I mean, I kind of knew going into it wasn't going to be as punchy and as energetic as what I got out of Congregation, but I was a little more optimistic and hoping that they would be. It's not, but it's not a bad start. If it bores you, then it's going to suck trying to get you into the rest of the albums. Just start with that. Just work your way backwards in the discography, then work your way forwards, and maybe that way, which I need to do at some point, you'll get a better appreciation for this. Once again, take care, y'all. See you in the next vid.